Okay, so the next slide, I'm going in to talk about a little bit of the details of the client holding structure. So in regards to what what we provide in regards to the clients, I think a big part of it is that the end goal is usually to move certain assets from China or some offshore jurisdiction to the US. And so this usually involves some sort of offshore structuring in regards to various holding companies. So you can see on the top left, Mr. A holds a BVI holding company or kind of an offshore holding company. And so this then holds a BVI operating company, which holds kind of operating companies in China, and then maybe holding companies with various investments in China, et cetera. And then essentially, these accounts then need to be transferred to the US. And so Megan's going to talk a little bit about the KYC procedures, but the end goal is to transition the assets, as I said previously, across borders and to the next generation. So it's essentially Mr. A's assets in China, these operating companies, these various cash generating companies or investments need to be moved to the US. And so part of that transfer process involves kind of personal bank accounts, whether they be cash assets or kind of company assets, moved to an offshore third-party jurisdiction and then moved into the US. And then funds in the US can then be used to purchase real estate, financial products, or life insurance. And then essentially, our structures and kind of structures that we've discussed with US attorneys, such as Tony and other US attorneys, lead us to think that a US irrevocable trust is a great structure for both cross-border transfers and transfers to the next generation. And these often include ILITs, so irrevocable life insurance trusts. So next. Next slide. So in the next slide, we see kind of a sample holding structure. So the next slide with the solid lines is kind of our sample illustrative client holding structure. So essentially, we'll use a variety of US trusts to hold offshore companies that hold Chinese companies. So that would usually be a revocable trust. And then an irrevocable trust would then hold US LLCs or life insurance policies directly. And this irrevocable US trust can be formed in the form of an ILIT or can be formed of just a regular irrevocable trust. And so these structures allow Mr. A to transition his assets from China and some offshore jurisdictions to a US jurisdiction, and then also allow Mr. A to transition his assets from his generation to the next generation. And life insurance is a very essential part of this process because it allows Mr. A to provide some sort of guarantee as to maybe some minimum payment to the next generation, I guess. And then aside from that, also allows Mr. A to have some flexibility in controlling these investments. Yeah. So next slide, we're going to go into life insurance trusts. Yeah. And so going into this slide, Tony, you can feel free to chip in a little bit as well. We're going to go into kind of the very kind of basic irrevocable life insurance trust structure. And then I'll talk a little bit about how this can be enhanced for kind of families that want to transition wealth to multiple generations instead of just the first generation. So typically, the grantor makes one gift or multiple gifts of cash or other assets to an ILIT, usually cash, so that the ILIT can then pay the premium to purchase the life insurance policy. And essentially, this life insurance policy, upon the death of the insured, will pay a death benefit back to the ILIT. And this ILIT can be set up in a way to directly distribute these funds to a set beneficiary or set beneficiaries. Typically in our structures, this beneficiary will then be an irrevocable US trust for the benefit of US persons. So grantor usually gifts cash from offshore. Grantor moves cash from maybe China or from Taiwan to these ILITs, and then this ILIT would then make the distribution, the death benefit distribution to the beneficiary in the States. And if this beneficiary is set up as an irrevocable U.S. trust, it can then use this cash as further reinvestments in the States. And so I'm going into some of this detail. ILIT is an irrevocable trust, as everyone knows. So this grantor would then give this cash irrevocably to the trust. And then the ILIT is also the owner and the beneficiary of the life insurance policy. Essentially, it owns the life insurance policy, but by owning the life insurance policy, it needs to be sure to be able to pay these premiums to purchase this life insurance. And then, yeah, that's essentially the structure. Tony, do you want to talk about it a little bit in Chinese?
Yes, okay. 刚才那个 Max 有秀另外一些图画，就是有很多指标的，很多 arrow 的那个东西。其实我要讲的那个重点是说，到美国的时候只是后半段的事情，其实75%的工作都是在海外要去执行的。也是因此，这个吕会计师跟团队的工作那么重要，因为必须要了解那么多国家，就是台湾、中国大陆、马来西亚、新加坡等等的一些不同的法律、不同的税法，要把它带进来。所以其实我们奖金这个部分只是你看这个图画，只有20%是美国这个部分哈。我只是强调说，真的是要把钱带到美国才可以做任何事情，带不了到美国。过不了 KYC， 过不了 AML， 什么东西都不用讲了哈，我只是强调这一点。好，这样子Max, let's go to the ILIT page again. 当这个钱带到美国来的时候，我们就是用这个不可撤销信托。但为什么用不可撤销信托呢？因为不可撤销信托它主要目的是说，以后这里面的资产可以避免以后的遗产税。好，假如说钱带过来是摆到自己的口袋，或是摆在一个可撤销信托的话，这样子这个设立信托的过世以后，这个还要去算遗产税啊，所以就没有做一个很完整的一个税务的规划哈，所以就是要用这个不可撤销信托。这样子这个图画上面左边这个 gift 就是刚才图画一大堆在亚洲做了一些规划，把钱带过来，全部过美国的 KYC、AML 的这个部分进去这个 ILIT， 这样这个道理是这个非美国人他把钱带进，他等于是赠与资产去付这个保费，好，所以赠与资产是付个保费，这个信托是这个保单的拥有人，是这个保单的 owner，OK， 因此的话，这个保单的被保人过世的时候就没有遗产税。假如说这个保单是一个美国身份的人持有的，他是 owner 的话，他过世的时候，这个保单1000万保单、5000万保单，全部要算在这个 owner 的遗产，算遗产税，这是不好的规划。所以我们是要用这个保险信托来避免遗产税。但这个保险信托它需要资金啊，但资金从国外就是过关以后赠与来美国，好，但是这个 ILIT 这个 Irrevocable Life Insurance Trust 这是保单的 owner， 他收到这个钱，他去付这个保费，所以这个上面这个图画上有去付 premium。当被保人过世的时候，这个理赔是回到信托，因为是信托持有，没有个人持有，所以没有遗产税的问题。然后这个信托可以付这个里面的这个收益这个赔偿额给受益人，按照信托的这个写的这个条文里面说，什么时候要给小孩子、给后代，是什么情况要给。所以这个是一个信托的保险信托的架构的这个一个介绍。Max, next one.
Just a moment. 那个Tony，我稍微问一下，因为等一下 Megan 会提到这个问题的哈。刚刚你一直强调说这个资金在海外这个部分的 KYC 啦、social fund 这些蛮重要的。那你可以稍微说明一下吗？在美国这边，如果说我们资金进了 ILIT 进了 ILIT， 然后美国的保险公司要来收 ILIT 的这个付保险费的这个 social fund 这个资金来源的话，他们大概会要求到什么程度？因为这个地方可能是我们现在资金进到美国买保单的话比较关心的哈。那这个大概他在 compliance check 的时候，他大概会 check 什么东西？这个可不可以请你说？
没关系，所以没问题。所以这个部分其实保险公司它其实还有2个利益啦，还有2个目标，一个是要避免 政府给他找麻烦，另外一个是他想要赚钱啊，所以他有保费可以收，他其实很想要收这个钱的哈，所以心中有这个矛盾的这个东西，又想要收，又要漂亮的这个收法哈，所以吕会这个答案是这样，答案是其实保险公司不会去纠察这个就是追踪这个事情。保险公司跟我做律师，我们都是靠银行、金融公司、银行啊，或是这个投资行去做这个工作，因为他们要把钱进来，所以困难点不是说要去付保费，困难点是怎么钱落到保险信托的这个银行账户里面，这个钱落进去，这个是最重要的，因为落进去以后到一个美国的这个银行的话，或是一个投资行的话，保险公司是很高兴去收任何有美国的这个户头，他不会去多问，